An obese teen helps a Hell's Angel fix his broken bike on a lonely desert road. But what happens next will leave you speechless. He thinks it's just a random act of kindness, a scared kid helping a dying biker. But when the engine roars back to life, something deeper sparks between them. This rough, tattooed man starts treating the boy like family, like someone he used to know. And when the truth finally comes out, it shatters everything the boy thought he knew about his life and about his father. A mother's secret, a dying man's last wish, and a son who just wanted to be seen. When love comes roaring back from the past, can it heal a lifetime of pain? Or will the truth destroy them both before they ever get the chance? What if the man you saved turned out to be the father you never knew you had? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked pavement behind Ellen's diner, where Tyler Moore dragged another heavy garbage bag toward the dumpster. Sweat trickled down his neck as he heaved the bag into the metal container, his thick arms straining with the effort. The familiar shame crept in as his work shirt clung to his large frame, but he pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the familiar routine of his daily chores. Inside the diner's kitchen, the ancient air conditioning unit rattled and wheezed. Tyler had fixed it 3 times already this summer, using the worn tools his grandfather had left him. Those quiet moments in the back room, surrounded by nuts and bolts and the memory of his grandpa's patient teachings, were when Tyler felt most at peace. "Hey, Tubby," Mark's voice carried through the kitchen window. "Don't eat all the leftovers while you're back there." Laughter erupted from the teenage customers at the counter. Tyler's cheeks burned, but he kept his head down and continued working. His mother Ellen shot him a concerned glance from behind the register, but he gave her a small smile, silently telling her he was okay. He'd learned long ago that responding to the taunts only made things worse. The familiar rumble of a motorcycle engine filled the air, growing louder as it approached the diner. Tyler was used to bikers passing through their small Arizona town, especially during the scorching summer months when the highways shimmered with heat. But this engine sound was different. It was erratic, uneven. Suddenly, a deafening screech of tires cut through the afternoon quiet. The thunderous crash that followed made Tyler's heart leap into his throat. His body moved before his mind could catch up, feet carrying him around the corner of the building toward the source of the commotion. A cloud of dust and exhaust filled the air. Through the haze, Tyler could make out the twisted metal of a Harley-Davidson motorcycle sprawled across the asphalt. Beside it lay a massive figure, a man covered in tattoos, his leather vest torn, groaning in obvious pain. A crowd had already started to gather. Tyler recognized faces from the diner, including Mark and Lydia, who stood with their phones raised, recording the scene. Nobody moved to help. They just stood there, watching, as if the injured man was part of some reality show for their entertainment. Tyler's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct told him to stay back, to remain invisible as he always did. But something stronger pushed him forward, the same quiet voice that guided his hands when fixing broken things, that reminded him of his grandfather's words about doing what was right, not what was easy. Ignoring the snickers and whispered comments about his size as he moved through the crowd, Tyler approached the fallen biker. The man's face was scraped raw on one side, and his leg was bent at an awkward angle. Up close, the tattoos that covered his massive arms told stories of a hard life, skulls, chains, and faded military insignias. "Someone call 911!" Tyler called out, his voice stronger than he expected. He knelt beside the injured man, remembering the first aid training his mother had insisted he take last summer. "Sir, can you hear me? Try not to move." The biker's eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain but alert. He looked at Tyler with a mixture of surprise and confusion, probably wondering why this overweight teenager was the only one coming to his aid. "My leg," the man growled through clenched teeth. "Think it's broken." Tyler nodded, keeping his voice calm despite his racing heart. "Help is coming. I'm going to stay right here with you until the ambulance arrives." He glanced up at the growing crowd. "Lydia, can you please get some clean towels from the diner? And maybe some water?" Lydia lowered her phone, looking uncertain for a moment before nodding and hurrying inside. Mark continued filming, but Tyler noticed his friend's expression had shifted from amusement to something more thoughtful. The injured biker tried to push himself up, but Tyler gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Please stay still, sir. We don't want to risk making any injuries worse." The man's skin was hot to the touch, and Tyler could feel him trembling slightly. "I'm Tyler. What's your name?" "Rex," the man grunted, his breath coming in sharp gasps. "The bike. Need to check the bike." "Don't worry about the motorcycle right now," Tyler said firmly, surprising himself with his assertiveness. "Let's focus on getting you taken care of first." Lydia returned with an armful of clean white towels and a bottle of water. Tyler carefully pressed one of the towels against a bleeding cut on Rex's forehead, while using another to shield the man's face from the relentless sun. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air, but Tyler kept his attention on Rex, talking quietly to keep him calm and still. He noticed the man's fingers were clenched tightly around something, a worn leather wallet that had fallen from his pocket during the crash. Tyler carefully retrieved it and placed it securely in Rex's vest pocket, earning a grateful nod from the injured biker. As the ambulance pulled up, Tyler heard his mother's voice cutting through the crowd. "Everyone back inside or move along. Give them some space to work." Ellen Moore's tone left no room for argument, and the spectators began to disperse. The paramedics quickly took over, but as they prepared to load Rex onto a stretcher, the injured man reached out and caught Tyler's wrist with surprising strength. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of genuine human connection that transcended appearances and assumptions. "Thanks, kid," Rex said gruffly. "Not everyone would have stopped to help someone like me." Tyler felt his chest tighten with emotion, but before he could respond, the paramedics were moving Rex into the ambulance. He stood watching as they drove away, the sound of the sirens fading into the distance. Only then did Tyler become aware of the whispers and stares from the remaining onlookers. His momentary confidence began to shrink under their scrutiny, and he felt the familiar urge to retreat to his safe space in the back room. But as he turned toward the diner, he caught sight of his reflection in the window. And for the first time in a long while, the person looking back at him didn't seem quite so invisible. The burly biker tried pushing himself up from the ground, his weathered face contorting in pain. "Damn it all to hell," he growled, only to collapse back into the dirt when his leg gave out. His black leather jacket bore the distinctive Death's Head emblem of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, the skull's empty eyes seeming to dare anyone to come closer. A fearful murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. Someone whispered, "Hell's Angel. Better stay back." Others took a few steps away, their phones still recording but from a safer distance. Tyler's hands trembled as he knelt beside the fallen man, but his voice remained steady. "Please, let me help you up." His heart hammered against his ribs, every survival instinct screaming at him to retreat. Instead, he carefully supported Rex's shoulders, helping him into a sitting position. "The bike," Rex muttered through gritted teeth. "Need to check the bike." Tyler glanced at the fallen Harley, its chrome dulled by dust. Taking a deep breath, he planted his feet and wrapped his hands around the motorcycle's handlebars. With every ounce of strength in his body, he pulled upward. His muscles strained and sweat beaded on his forehead, but slowly, steadily, the heavy machine rose from the ground. Someone in the crowd let out a surprised, "Whoa!" as Tyler managed to get the motorcycle upright, setting it carefully on its kickstand. "Son of a..." Rex's eyes widened slightly. "Didn't think you had it in you, kid." Tyler was all ready, examining the motorcycle with a practiced eye. The front axle was visibly bent, and worse, gasoline was steadily dripping from a crack in the fuel tank. The acrid smell filled his nostrils as he assessed the damage. Through the diner's window, he could see his mother Ellen's worried face. She shook her head firmly, mouthing, "No." But Tyler was already moving. He jogged to the back room, his sanctuary, where his grandfather's old toolbox sat waiting. The worn red metal container held more than just tools. It contained memories of hours spent learning at his grandfather's side, understanding the inner workings of engines and machinery. "Tyler Moore, don't you dare!" his mother called after him as he hurried back outside with the toolbox. But something stronger than fear was driving him now. Rex watched with interest as Tyler opened the toolbox and began pulling out tools with quiet confidence. "You know what you're doing with those, boy?" "Yes, sir," Tyler replied, already applying epoxy putty to seal the leaking gas tank. His hands moved with surprising dexterity for their size, each motion precise and purposeful. "My grandfather taught me. He could fix anything with an engine." "Must have been one hell of a teacher," Rex commented, his voice tight with pain but curious. Tyler worked methodically, speaking softly as he explained each step. "The tank leak isn't too bad. This epoxy will hold until you can get it properly welded. The axle's another story, but..." He adjusted something under the front fork, his face screwed up in concentration. "I think I can at least get it straight enough to ride to a shop." The crowd had grown quieter, their earlier mockery forgotten as they watched the overweight teenager they'd always ignored demonstrate unexpected skill. Even Mark had lowered his phone, his expression thoughtful. After 20 minutes of focused work, Tyler straightened up, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Try starting it now," he suggested. Rex reached over and turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life with its signature Harley rumble. A small smile tugged at the corner of Tyler's mouth as he adjusted the idle speed. "Well, I'll be damned," Rex said, genuine respect in his voice. He gestured to the bike's seat. "Go on, kid. Give it a try." Tyler's eyes widened. "Really? You earned it. Just don't touch the clutch." With trembling hands, Tyler carefully straddled the massive motorcycle. The leather seat was still warm from the sun, and the chrome controls gleamed under his fingers. He wrapped his hand around the throttle, feeling the powerful machine thrumming beneath him. The crowd had fallen completely silent. For once, nobody was laughing or pointing phones at him. Tyler twisted the throttle slightly, and the engine's rumble deepened to a hungry growl. Something electric raced through his body. Pride, excitement, a feeling of being truly alive. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his size or what others thought of him. He was just a boy on a motorcycle, tasting freedom. Rex nodded approvingly, a hint of a smile visible beneath his gruff exterior. "Not bad at all, kid. Not bad at..." His voice suddenly trailed off. The color drained from his face, leaving it ashen gray. "Mr. Rex?" Tyler quickly dismounted the bike, moving toward him with concern. But before Tyler could reach him, Rex's eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed face first into the dirt. His massive frame lay motionless in the dust as gasps erupted from the watching crowd. "Someone call an ambulance!" Tyler shouted, dropping to his knees beside the unconscious biker. The pride and excitement of moments before vanished, replaced by a new wave of fear as he checked for Rex's pulse with shaking fingers. The wail of sirens cut through the afternoon heat as the ambulance screeched to a halt beside Rex's fallen form. 2 paramedics jumped out, their movements swift and practiced as they assessed the unconscious biker. Tyler stood back, his heart hammering against his ribs as they worked. "He's breathing but labored," one paramedic called out. "Blood pressure's low. Let's get him loaded." "I'm going with him," Tyler said, his voice stronger than he felt. When the paramedic started to object, Tyler added, "Please, he's alone." The paramedic's face softened, and he nodded. "All right, kid, but stay out of the way." The ride to Arizona Regional Hospital was a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. Tyler sat in the corner of the ambulance, watching Rex's chest rise and fall beneath an oxygen mask. The biker's tattoos seemed darker against his pale skin, like shadows of a wilder past. In the emergency room, Tyler found himself pacing the waiting area, his work shirt still stained with motorcycle grease. Hours ticked by on the wall clock. Other patients and families came and went, some giving him curious looks. An overweight teenager waiting alone, covered in dirt and oil. Finally, a nurse with kind eyes and graying hair approached him. Her name tag read, "Carla Brooks." "Are you the young man who came in with Mr. Dalton?" she asked. Tyler nodded, twisting his hands together. Is he okay?" Nurse Carla's expression was gentle but serious. The crash itself wasn't too severe, mostly bruising and a mild concussion, but it revealed something more serious. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "His lungs are failing. Years of heavy smoking combined with exposure to dust and chemicals, well, it's taken its toll. The crash just brought the symptoms to the surface." Tyler's throat tightened. He thought about the powerful man who'd let him sit on his motorcycle just hours ago, who'd looked at him with respect instead of ridicule. "Can I see him?" "He's still groggy from the medication," Nurse Carla warned. "But yes, you can visit briefly. Room 203. The hospital corridor seemed endless, its fluorescent lights harsh against the pale green walls. Tyler counted the room numbers until he reached 203. The door was partially open, and the steady beep of monitors spilled into the hallway. Rex lay propped up in the hospital bed, looking smaller somehow without his leather jacket. Tubes and wires connected him to various machines, and an oxygen mask covered the lower half of his face. His eyes were closed, but they fluttered open as Tyler approached. For a moment, confusion clouded Rex's features. Then recognition dawned, and a weak grin appeared beneath the mask. He lifted it slightly with one hand. "You again, huh?" His voice was raspy but carried a hint of his earlier warmth. "Guess you're my guardian angel." Tyler shuffled his feet, embarrassed but pleased. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "Been better," Rex admitted. "Been worse, too." He studied Tyler's face for a long moment, something distant and sad crossing his expression. "Kid, you remind me of my son." The words hit Tyler like a physical blow. He stood frozen, his mind racing. In all his 17 years, his mother had never once mentioned his father. The subject was forbidden, like a door permanently locked and the key thrown away. I should go," Tyler stammered, suddenly overwhelmed. "It's late, and my mom will be worried." Rex nodded, his eyes already heavy with medication. "Thanks for staying, kid. Means something, having someone there." The drive home with his mother was silent, the car filled with unspoken tension. Ellen's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her lips pressed into a thin line. It wasn't until they were sitting at their small kitchen table, plates of reheated meatloaf between them, that the dam broke. "I heard about what happened today," Ellen said, her fork scraping against the plate. "About the biker." Tyler pushed his food around, not meeting her eyes. "He needed help, Mom." "Tyler." Her voice cracked slightly. "You need to stay away from men like that. They're dangerous. They destroy everything they touch." "He was hurt. What was I supposed to do? Just watch him die?" "You're supposed to be smart!" Ellen's hand slammed down on the table, making the water glasses jump. "You're supposed to protect yourself. Men like that, bikers, criminals, they're not good people. They don't change. They just—" She caught herself, taking a deep breath. "Just promise me you'll stay away from him." Tyler stared at his plate, his appetite gone. Through the kitchen window, he could see the diner's neon sign flickering erratically. Another thing that needed fixing. "I promise," he said quietly, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. But even as he spoke, something deep inside him rebelled against the promise. He couldn't forget the respect in Rex's eyes when he fixed the motorcycle, or the sad fondness when he mentioned his son. There was more to the story, more to Rex, more to his mother's fear, more to his own history than anyone was telling him. The neon sign blinked outside, its broken rhythm like a Morse code he couldn't quite decipher. Tyler pushed away from the table, carrying his untouched dinner to the sink, unaware that the connections formed today would soon prove impossible to break. A week crawled by like molasses. Tyler fell back into his routine at the diner, wiping tables and fixing what needed fixing. The summer heat pressed against the windows, making the afternoon shift feel endless. The familiar jingle of the door barely registered as he scrubbed at a particularly stubborn coffee stain. "Well, if it ain't my guardian angel." Tyler's head snapped up at the gravelly voice. There in the doorway stood Rex, looking both smaller and tougher than before. A clear oxygen tube ran from a portable tank to his nose, and he leaned heavily on a wooden cane, but his eyes still held that fierce spark. A few regular customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while Lydia nearly dropped her order pad. "Should you be out of the hospital?" Tyler asked, hurrying over to help Rex to a booth. Rex eased himself down with a grunt. "Doctor says I should rest, but I hate resting. Makes me feel useless." He tapped his cane against the floor. "Figure if I'm going to sit around, might as well do it somewhere with decent pie." From behind the counter, Ellen stood rigid as a statue. Tyler could feel the tension radiating off her in waves. "Black coffee and a slice of apple pie," Tyler offered, trying to keep things normal. "You read my mind, kid." Rex's weathered face creased in a smile. "Still remember how to handle that wrench set of yours?" Tyler nodded eagerly. "Been fixing the milkshake machine. The bearing was shot, but I managed to salvage it." "That's good work." Rex leaned forward, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "You know, I've been thinking about that, Harley. The carburetor needs a proper going over. Thought maybe you'd like to learn how to do it right." Tyler's heart leapt. "Really? You'd teach me?" "Sure would. Could bring her by sometime. Show you the ropes." Rex paused to catch his breath, the oxygen hissing softly. "Your daddy teach you about engines?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Tyler shifted his weight. "No, sir. He died before I was born. Everything I know I learned from my grandfather's old manuals." Something flickered behind Rex's eyes. Recognition, maybe, or pain. He opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted by Ellen appearing with his coffee and pie. "On the house," Tyler said quickly, before Rex could reach for his wallet. "Now, kid, I can't let you—" "Please." Tyler managed a smile. "Consider it payment for the carburetor lessons." Rex studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." He took a sip of coffee, his gaze drifting to Ellen behind the counter. "Ma'am, you've got yourself a fine boy here." Ellen's only response was a tight smile before she disappeared into the kitchen. They talked for nearly an hour, Rex sharing stories about different bikes he'd owned and engines he'd rebuilt. Tyler soaked up every word, asking questions about timing belts and compression ratios. It felt natural, like talking to the grandfather he barely remembered. The sun was setting when Rex finally pushed himself to his feet. "Better head out before your mama decides to poison my next cup of coffee." He winked to show he was joking, but there was something sad in his expression. "I'll bring the Harley by next week, show you that carburetor." After Rex left, Ellen cornered Tyler in the storage room. "I thought I told you to stay away from him." "Mom, he's just a customer, and he knows about engines. He can teach me things." "You don't need him to teach you anything." Ellen's voice cracked. "You're smart enough on your own." Tyler set down the box of napkins he'd been holding. "He's not what you think, Mom. He's different. He's kind." "Kind?" Ellen laughed bitterly. "You don't know anything about men like that. The things they do, the lives they destroy." "Maybe some of them change," Tyler said quietly. Ellen turned away, but not before Tyler caught the shimmer of tears in her eyes. "Just be careful," she whispered, and left him alone with the stored supplies and his confused thoughts. Outside in the parking lot, Rex sat in his truck, watching the diner's lights glow against the darkening sky. His gnarled hands opened the glove compartment, pulling out a worn photograph. In it, a much younger woman with Ellen's features smiled at the camera, holding a baby wrapped in blue. The edge was torn, as if someone had been cut out of the frame. Rex traced the woman's face with one finger, his expression a mixture of longing and regret. The same photograph sat hidden in the bottom of Ellen's dresser drawer, tucked away with other memories she'd tried to forget. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Rex's truck rumbled into the diner's parking lot, his Harley secured in the bed. Tyler was already waiting, having arrived early to help with breakfast prep. His hands trembled with excitement as he wiped them on his apron. "Ready for your first real lesson, kid?" Rex called out, lowering the tailgate with careful movements. His oxygen tank hung at his side, the clear tube crossing his face like a permanent fixture. "Yes, sir." Tyler hurried over, his work shoes crunching on the gravel. Together they eased the motorcycle down using wooden planks as a ramp. Rex had to pause halfway, breathing heavily, but he waved off Tyler's concerned look. "Just need a minute. Getting old ain't for sissies." They set up a workspace in the shade of the building, spreading tools on an old tarp. Rex settled onto a folding chair, pointing to different parts of the engine. "First thing about motorcycles, they're like people. Treat 'em right, they'll do right by you." Over the next few hours, Rex guided Tyler through dismantling the fuel line. His large, tattooed hands demonstrated each step with surprising gentleness. "See that spark plug? That's the heart of it all. Without the right spark at the right time, nothing works." Tyler absorbed every word, asking questions that made Rex smile. "You've got good instincts, boy. Reminds me of myself back when..." "Back when what?" Rex's face clouded. "Back when I thought I had all the time in the world." He cleared his throat. "Hand me that wrench, would you?" During their lunch break, sharing sandwiches Ellen had grudgingly packed, Rex opened up more. "Spent 23 years with the Angels. Thought they were my family." He stared at his hands. "Lost my real family chasing that life. My wife, my..." He trailed off, pain etching deeper lines in his face. Tyler listened, feeling the weight of unspoken words. "Did you ever try to find them? Sometimes the damage you do can't be fixed with just a wrench and good intentions." Rex's voice was rough. But that's why I'm glad to see you taking care of yourself. Starting those jogs, that's brave." Tyler blushed. He'd been sneaking short runs behind the diner after closing, inspired by Rex's talks about self-improvement. "Just a few laps. I'm not very fast." Speed ain't important. It's the direction that matters. From inside, Ellen watched them through the window, her dish towel twisting in her hands. The sight of them together stirred memories she'd fought hard to bury. Younger days, different choices, a love that had turned dangerous. The days fell into a pattern. Each morning, Rex would arrive with a new lesson about engines or life. Tyler's confidence grew with each small victory, tightening a bolt just right, understanding the timing sequence, making the engine purr instead of sputter. The townspeople noticed the change. Where they once crossed the street to avoid Rex, they now waved. Some even stopped to watch them work, curious about the unlikely friendship between the gentle giant of a boy and the grizzled biker. Lydia, one of Tyler's co-workers, brought them lemonade one particularly hot afternoon. "You guys are like a motorcycle repair reality show," she teased. Even Mark, who used to join in the bullying, started asking Tyler questions about engines during their shifts. One sunny afternoon, after a week of careful work, the moment of truth arrived. Tyler sat astride the Harley, his hands on the grips, heart pounding. "Give her some gas," Rex encouraged. "Let's hear what she can do." Tyler twisted the throttle. The engine roared to life, smooth and powerful. The vibration traveled up through his body, and for a moment, he felt invincible. Rex's laughter boomed across the parking lot. He clapped his hands, pride shining in his eyes. "That's it, boy. That's the sweet sound of success." The triumph of the moment carried them through the rest of the day. But as the sun set and Tyler helped Rex load the bike back into his truck, something changed. Rex doubled over in a violent coughing fit, gripping the tailgate for support. Tyler reached for him, but Rex waved him back. When the coughing subsided, Rex slumped against his truck, looking suddenly old and frail. "Not much time left, old man," he whispered, seemingly to himself. Tyler pretended to be busy with the straps securing the motorcycle, his throat tight with worry. He wanted to say something, about doctors, about hope, about not giving up, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just worked in silence, the evening air heavy with things unsaid. As Rex drove away, his taillights disappeared into the gathering darkness. Tyler stood in the empty parking lot, grease still staining his hands, wondering how something could feel so right and so fragile all at once. Inside the diner, the usual evening sounds continued. Plates clinking, coffee brewing, the hum of conversation. But Tyler's world had shifted slightly on its axis, marked by the echo of Rex's whispered words and the knowledge that some repairs couldn't be made with tools alone. The evening sky had turned deep purple when Ellen flipped the diner's sign to "closed." Her movements were sharp, agitated. Through the window, she could see Rex's truck still parked in the shadows of the lot. She'd been watching him all day, her anxiety building with each passing hour. Taking a deep breath, she stepped outside. The desert air had cooled, but her face felt hot. Rex was loading tools into his truck bed, his oxygen tube glinting in the security lights. "We need to talk," Ellen said, her voice tight. "Away from Tyler." Rex turned slowly, leaning against his truck. "Evening, ma'am." "Don't." Ellen's hands trembled. "Don't pretend we're strangers. You need to stay away from my son." The words hung in the air between them. Rex's weathered face showed surprise, then recognition dawned in his eyes. He studied her features more closely. "Ellen?" The name came out as a whisper. "Ellen Martinez?" "It's Moore now," she said sharply, Has been for 17 years. Rex gripped his truck harder, his knuckles white. I knew there was something familiar about the boy, the way he works with engines. Stop. Ellen's voice cracked. You lost any right to notice things about him when you chose that life. The drugs, the violence, the angels. I changed, Rex started to say, but Ellen cut him off. Changed? Like you promised to change back then? I saw your brothers beat a man half to death, and you just watched. I left that night and never looked back. Behind them, unseen in the diner's shadow, Tyler had stepped out to take out the trash. He froze at the sound of their voices, the bag forgotten in his hand. Ellen, please. Rex's voice was hoarse. If I'd known... But Ellen was already moving toward her car, tears streaming down her face. The engine roared to life, and she peeled out of the parking lot, leaving Rex staring after her taillights. Tyler stood in the shadows, his mind spinning. His mother knew Rex? From before? The pieces wouldn't fit together, but something, deep in his gut, told him this was important. The next morning, Tyler confronted his mother in their small kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the window, making the tears in Ellen's eyes sparkle. How do you know Rex? He demanded. Why didn't you tell me? Ellen busied herself with the coffee maker, her hands shaking. It was a long time ago, Tyler. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me, his voice rose. You've been lying to me, about Rex, about everything. I've been protecting you, Ellen whispered, but wouldn't meet his eyes. She wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. Please, just trust me. Trust you? Tyler's chest felt tight. How can I when you won't tell me the truth? He grabbed his jacket and stormed out, ignoring her calls. His feet carried him automatically toward the trailer park where Rex stayed, on the outskirts of town. The morning sun beat down as Tyler walked between the rows of mobile homes. He found Rex's trailer easily. It was the only one with a Harley parked outside. He knocked on the door. After a moment, Rex appeared, looking worse than usual. His face was pale, and the oxygen tube seemed more prominent. Tyler? Rex's surprise was evident. Shouldn't you be at school? I need answers, Tyler said firmly, though his heart was racing. About you and my mom. Rex sighed heavily, then gestured for Tyler to come inside. The trailer was small but neat. A notebook lay open on the tiny table, and Tyler caught a glimpse of a sketch. A baby's face, carefully drawn in pencil. Rex followed his gaze. That's from an old photo, he said quietly, picking up the notebook. My son. Lost him and his mother years ago. My own fault. Tyler's throat felt dry. What happened? I chose wrong, Rex said simply. Chose the life, the brotherhood, over family. By the time I realized my mistake, he broke off in a violent coughing fit. Tyler watched in horror as Rex doubled over, pressing a rag to his mouth. When he pulled it away, bright red spots stained the cloth. You should go, Rex said roughly, but Tyler stood his ground. I'm going to fix your bike, he said firmly. All of it. Make it perfect. Tyler, I'm going to fix it, Tyler repeated, his voice stronger. And you're going to ride it again. That's all there is to it. He left before Rex could argue, his mind already running through the list of repairs still needed. Behind him, Rex watched him go, holding the bloody rag and thinking about second chances that come too late. The sound of Tyler's footsteps faded away, leaving Rex alone with his sketches, his memories, and the steady hiss of oxygen that kept him breathing. He looked down at the baby's face he'd drawn, then slowly closed the notebook, his hands trembling slightly from more than just illness. The setting sun painted long shadows across the diner's worn linoleum floor. Tyler had stayed late after closing, meticulously cleaning tables while gathering his courage. His heart thumped against his ribs as he approached his mother, who was counting the day's receipts at the counter. "Mom," he said softly, "I invited Rex for dinner tonight, after hours." Ellen's shoulders stiffened. The receipt in her hand trembled slightly. "Tyler, I don't think—" "Please," he interrupted. "He's been teaching me so much, and he's sick, Mom, really sick." Ellen closed her eyes, her face a battlefield of emotions. Finally, she nodded once, sharply. "Fine, but just this once." At 7:30, the bell above the door chimed. Rex stepped in, looking smaller somehow without his leather jacket, wearing a clean plaid shirt that hung loose on his thinning frame. The oxygen tube glinted in the fluorescent lights. "Evening?" he said, his gravelly voice uncertain. "Appreciate the invitation." Tyler pulled out a chair at his favorite booth, the one near the window where the neon sign cast a warm glow. Ellen stayed behind the counter, methodically preparing plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, her specialty. The silence felt heavy as they ate. Rex's hands shook slightly as he handled his fork, but his eyes lit up at the first bite. "This is incredible, Ellen. Always was the best cook in 3 counties. Ellen's face remained neutral, but Tyler caught a flicker of something in her eyes. A memory, maybe, or regret. "Tyler tells me you've been teaching him about engines," she said stiffly. Rex nodded, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "Kid's got a natural talent. Reminds me of—" He trailed off, catching himself. Tyler watched the interplay between them, sensing undercurrents he couldn't quite understand. The tension crackled like static electricity. When they finished eating, Rex reached for his wallet. "Let me pay for—" "That's not necessary," Ellen interrupted. "Please," Rex insisted. "It's the least I can—" His words cut off as the worn leather wallet slipped from his trembling fingers, falling open as it hit the table. A photograph fluttered out, landing face up between them. The edges were worn soft, the colors faded to sepia tones, but the image was clear. A younger Ellen, her face glowing, cradling a newborn baby. Tyler's breath caught as he recognized his mother's smile, the same one from the few baby pictures she'd shown him. Ellen's gasp shattered the silence. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock and recognition. Rex stared at the photo, then at Ellen, then at Tyler. The color drained from his face as understanding dawned. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh my God." Tyler felt the world tilt sideways. His ears rang as he looked between the photograph, his mother's stricken face, and Rex's devastated expression. "Ellen," Rex's voice broke. "Is he—" Ellen backed away from the table, tears streaming down her face. "Don't," she warned. "Don't you dare." "Kid," Rex turned to Tyler, his voice raw. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." Tyler's mouth felt dry as dust. The words came out barely above a whisper. "You're my father?" Rex nodded slowly, tears now flowing freely down his weathered cheeks. "Ellen, please," he started. "If I'd had any idea—" "No." Ellen's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to do this. You chose them over us, over everything. I saw what that life did to people. I saw what it was doing to you." "I changed," Rex pleaded. "I got out. I've spent years trying to make up for—" "It's too late." Ellen's words echoed off the diner walls. 17 years too late. I had to protect him from that world, from becoming— She gestured helplessly at Rex. "Mom," Tyler tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't work properly. "I don't expect forgiveness," Rex said quietly, gathering the photograph with trembling fingers. "I don't deserve it. I just want to know the boy I lost, the man he's becoming." Ellen turned away, her shoulders shaking with sobs. The door slammed behind her as she fled into the night. Tyler sat frozen, his mind replaying every moment with Rex over the past weeks, every shared smile over the Harley's engine, every lesson about torque and timing, every story about the road. They weren't just stories anymore. They were pieces of his own history, his own blood. Rex stood slowly, leaning heavily on his cane. "I should go," he said softly. "I'm sorry, Tyler, for everything." The bell chimed again as Rex left, leaving Tyler alone in the suddenly too quiet diner. The neon sign buzzed outside, casting alternating shadows and light across the table where the truth had finally come out. Tyler didn't remember driving home. He lay in his bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling as the hours crept by. Every memory shifted and reorganized itself in his mind. His mother's fierce protectiveness, her reaction to Rex's arrival, the way Rex had looked at him from the beginning, with something more than just kindness in his eyes. Questions he'd never thought to ask tumbled through his mind. Had his father really been dead? Or had that been easier than explaining the truth? How many times had Rex passed through town over the years, never knowing his son was so close? What would have been different if... Dawn began to creep over the horizon, and still Tyler lay awake, caught between the father he'd just found and the mother who'd kept him safe all these years, between anger and understanding, between past and present, unable to find peace in either. The days after the revelation crawled by like molasses. The diner's routine continued, but everything felt different now. Ellen moved through her tasks mechanically, her eyes distant, flinching whenever the door chimed. She arranged the work schedule so she never had to face Rex. Tyler watched his mother's pain, understanding it better now, but he couldn't stay away from Rex. After his evening shifts, he'd drive to the trailer park, bringing paper bags filled with soup and groceries. The first time, Rex's eyes had grown misty at the sight of homemade chicken noodle soup in a thermal container. "You didn't have to," Rex said, his voice rough. "I wanted to," Tyler replied simply, settling into the worn armchair across from Rex's recliner. Their conversations meandered through the hours, touching on life's deeper waters. Rex spoke of redemption, of the weight of past mistakes, and of the courage it takes to face them. "Real strength isn't in your fists," Rex told him one evening, oxygen tube glinting in the lamplight. "It's in knowing when to open your hands and let go of anger. Took me too many years to learn that." Tyler absorbed these lessons, watching his father's face in the golden hour light. Sometimes Rex would cough until he couldn't speak, and Tyler would quietly refill his water glass, pretending not to notice the flecks of red in the tissue. One afternoon, Rex insisted on teaching Tyler how to properly ride the Harley. They stood in the trailer park's dusty lot, the motorcycle gleaming with new paint and chrome. "Balance is everything," Rex explained, steadying the bike as Tyler straddled it. "Like life, you gotta find your center, then trust it." Tyler's hands gripped the handlebars, feeling the power thrumming beneath him. Rex's patient instruction helped him master the clutch, the throttle, the delicate dance of balance and control. "You're a natural," Rex praised, pride evident in his voice. "Must run in the blood." As Tyler's confidence grew, Rex suggested something special. "Let's take her out proper. One last road through the desert. Watch the sunset from Dead Man's Ridge." Tyler noticed the last, but didn't comment. Instead, he nodded, heart full. "When?" "Tomorrow morning, early before the heat hits." That evening, Tyler found his mother in the diner's office, doing paperwork. His palms were sweaty as he told her about the planned ride. "Mom, I'm going riding with Rex tomorrow, to see the sunset." He watched her shoulders stiffen. "I need to do this." Ellen's pen stopped moving. For a long moment, she said nothing. When she turned, her face was a battlefield of emotions: fear, resignation, love. "Come home safe," she whispered, voice trembling. She reached out and squeezed his hand, and in that gesture was everything she couldn't say. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Tyler arrived at the diner early, helmet tucked under his arm. He'd borrowed his friend Mark's leather jacket, and it felt like armor against the morning chill. 7 o'clock came and went. Then 8. Tyler paced the parking lot, checking his phone repeatedly. No messages. By 9, worry had settled in his stomach like lead. He called Rex's number, but it went straight to voicemail. At 10, he couldn't wait any longer. The drive to the trailer park seemed to take forever. Rex's truck was there, but no one answered his knock. The neighbor, an elderly woman with kind eyes, approached him slowly. "You're Rex's boy, aren't you?" She held out an envelope, slightly crumpled. "He left this on the workbench last night. Said you'd come looking." Tyler's hands shook as he took the envelope. His name was written on the front in Rex's careful scrawl. He sank down on the workbench beside the gleaming Harley and opened the letter. "Dear Tyler, didn't want you to watch me fade. The doctors say it's time, and I'm checking into hospice this morning. You fixed more than my bike. You fixed me. Knowing you, even for these few weeks, helped me make peace with my past. You're twice the man I ever was. The Harley's yours now. Paperwork's in the saddlebag. Ride safe, and remember, real strength is in your heart, not your fists. Love, Dad." The letter blurred as tears filled Tyler's eyes. He slid down to sit on the dusty ground, his back against the workbench, and let the sobs come. The Harley stood beside him, sunlight dancing off its chrome, a silent testament to the brief, precious time he'd had with his father. He didn't know how long he sat there, letter clutched in his hands, until the tears finally ran dry. The morning sun had climbed high, warming the metal of the bike beside him, its shadow stretching across the ground like a compass needle pointing towards something he wasn't ready to face. Tyler couldn't just sit there with the letter. Something pulled him up, urged him toward his mother's car. The hospice wasn't hard to find, a low, peaceful building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by desert flowers and cacti. At the front desk, Nurse Carla Brooks recognized him immediately. Her kind face softened with understanding. "Room 203, she said quietly. "He's been asking for you." The hallway seemed to stretch forever. Tyler's footsteps echoed against the polished floors, his heart pounding with each step. When he reached the door, he had to pause, gathering his courage before pushing it open. Rex lay propped up in the hospital bed, looking smaller somehow without his leather jacket and boots. Tubes and monitors created a constellation around him, but his eyes, those fierce, proud eyes, brightened the moment he saw Tyler. "Knew you'd figure it out," Rex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Smart kid like you." Tyler moved to the chair beside the bed, fighting back tears. "You could have told me. Couldn't bear to see disappointment in your eyes." Rex's hand trembled as he reached for Tyler's. "Wanted our last ride to be something good." Tyler gripped his father's hand, noticing how cold it felt. "We still had time." "No, son." Rex's eyes were clear, accepting. "Been running from time too long already. Rode too fast through life and missed all the good parts. Missed you growing up. Missed being the father you deserved." The afternoon light filtered through thin curtains, casting long shadows across the room. They talked quietly about everything and nothing. Missed birthdays, first days of school, broken hearts and broken dreams. Rex shared stories of his younger days, before the gang, when he still believed in possibilities. "Your mother," Rex said softly. "She was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away for chrome and leather and the open road." He coughed, and Tyler helped him sip water. "Biggest regret of my life, leaving you both." Tyler pulled his chair closer. Mom never told me about you. I used to make up stories about who you might be. Bet none of them were as disappointing as the truth, Rex said with a weak smile. No, Tyler answered, squeezing his hand. None of them were as brave as you are now. As evening settled in, Nurse Carla brought them both dinner, hospital food for Rex, a sandwich from the cafeteria for Tyler. Rex barely touched his meal, but his eyes never left his son's face, as if memorizing every detail. Got something for you? Rex said suddenly. He gestured weakly toward the small closet. In there. Tyler opened the door to find Rex's prized leather vest hanging inside. The patches and pins told stories of thousands of miles, of brotherhood and rebellion. But now, somehow, it seemed different, less a symbol of fear, and more a testament to a life lived, mistakes made, and redemption found. Can't wear it anymore, Rex said. Should go to someone who'll do it proud. Tyler carefully took the vest, feeling the worn leather beneath his fingers. I'll take good care of it. As night fell, Rex began to drift in and out of consciousness. In his more lucid moments, he would murmur old biker prayers, rough-edged benedictions asking for clear roads and safe passage. Tyler stayed, watching the monitors, listening to his father's labored breathing. Nurse Carla checked in regularly, adjusting medications and offering quiet support. You're doing good, she told Tyler during one visit. Just being here means everything. The hours crept by. Tyler dozed occasionally in the uncomfortable chair, but never let go of his father's hand. He thought about the Harley waiting at the trailer park, about the sunset ride they'd never take, about all the conversations that would remain unspoken. As the first gray light of dawn began filtering through the windows, Rex stirred. His eyes opened, clearer than they'd been all night. Tyler, he whispered. Tyler leaned forward. I'm here, Dad. Sorry for everything. Tyler felt tears rolling down his cheeks but didn't wipe them away. I forgive you, Dad, he whispered back. I forgive you. A smile, faint but real, crossed Rex's weathered face. He exhaled softly and didn't inhale again. The monitors went quiet. Nurse Carla appeared silently, checking for vitals she already knew weren't there. With gentle reverence, she pulled the sheet up to cover Rex's face. Tyler sat there, still holding his father's cooling hand, the leather vest heavy in his lap. Outside, the sun was rising over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine roared to life, its sound fading into the dawn like a final farewell. The morning after, Rex's funeral dawned clear and crisp. Tyler stood in front of the mirror, his father's leather vest heavy on his shoulders. The patches told stories he was only beginning to understand, each one a memory, a mistake, or a moment of grace. Outside, birds called to each other across the desert sky, their songs carrying through his open window. The funeral had been small but meaningful. A dozen weathered bikers had rolled in at sunrise, their chrome-laden machines gleaming in the early light. They lined their bikes up outside the chapel with military precision, a final guard of honor for one of their own. Town folks trickled in too, regulars from the diner, a few teachers who'd heard the story, even some of Tyler's classmates who'd once mocked him. Pastor David Riley had spoken simply but powerfully about redemption and second chances. Rex Grizzly Dalton, he'd said, his voice carrying through the quiet chapel. Found his way home in the end. Sometimes the longest road leads right back to where we should have been all along. Now, walking into the diner for his morning shift, Tyler felt different. The weight of Rex's vest wasn't just leather and memories. It was responsibility, a legacy to live up to. Ellen looked up as he entered, her eyes softening at the sight of him in his father's colors. "Come here," she whispered, opening her arms. Tyler stepped into his mother's embrace, feeling her tears soaking into his shirt. They stood there together, grieving for the years lost and celebrating the precious few weeks they'd had with Rex at the end. The morning sun streamed through the diner windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. "I'm sorry," Ellen said softly, pulling back to look at her son. "I should have told you about him years ago. I was so scared you'd follow his path, make his mistakes. But you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." Tyler nodded, understanding flowing between them. "He changed, Mom. At the end, he really did." The diner bell chimed as Pastor Riley entered, carrying a folder under his arm. He settled into his usual booth, ordering coffee from Lydia, who'd been extra kind to Tyler since Rex's passing. Even Mark, who used to join in the teasing, now gave Tyler respectful nods in the hallways at school. "Tyler," the pastor called, "got a minute to talk?" Tyler brought over a coffee pot and slid into the booth across from him. Pastor Riley's eyes were kind but determined as he laid out his idea. "The town's never had a memorial ride," he explained. "Thought we might organize one for Rex. Show people that redemption isn't just a word we say on Sundays. It's something real, something that changes lives." Tyler's hand tightened on the coffee pot. "I don't know if people would come." "Dad wasn't exactly—" "People surprise you," Pastor Riley interrupted gently. "I've already had calls from some of the local riding clubs. They heard about how Rex changed, how he spent his last weeks teaching his son about more than just engines." The idea took root in Tyler's mind, growing stronger with each passing day. He spent his afternoons polishing the Harley until it gleamed, each stroke of the cloth a meditation on memory and meaning. The bike had become more than transportation. It was a bridge between who he had been and who he was becoming. He started taking better care of himself, too. Early mornings found him jogging behind the diner, each lap a little longer than the last. He traded sugary sodas for water, French fries for salads. His body began to change, slowly but surely, not from shame, but from self-respect. Word spread through the school about his mechanical skills. It started with a freshman's broken bicycle chain, then a sophomore's stuck gears. Soon, kids were bringing their bikes to him during lunch break, watching in fascination as his sure hands diagnosed and fixed their problems. "How'd you learn all this?" a 7th grader asked one day, watching Tyler adjust his brake cables. Tyler smiled, thinking of those mornings with Rex. "My dad taught me. He said fixing things isn't just about knowing what's broken. It's about believing everything can be made right again." Ellen watched all of this from behind the diner counter, her heart swelling with pride and bittersweet joy. She saw how Tyler stood straighter now, how he met people's eyes instead of avoiding them. The vest he wore had once represented everything she feared, but on her son, it became a symbol of transformation. One evening, as they closed up the diner, she found Tyler studying an old photo of Rex. "You know what's strange?" he said, not looking up. "I used to think being invisible was safe, but Dad taught me that being seen, really seen, is worth all the risk in the world." Ellen wrapped her arm around his shoulders, noticing how much taller he seemed lately. "He'd be so proud of you, Tyler. Not just for fixing his bike or wearing his colors, but for fixing hearts, including your own." The memorial ride was set for the following month, when the desert heat would begin to soften into autumn. Pastor Riley had put up posters around town, and responses were coming in daily. But for Tyler, the real ride happened every morning, when he walked into the diner wearing his father's vest, ready to face whatever the day might bring. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was his father's son, his mother's pride, and his own man, all at once, all true, all hard-won and precious. The morning of the memorial ride dawned clear and bright, the Arizona sun painting the desert in shades of amber and rose. Tyler stood in front of his bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting Rex's leather vest over his t-shirt. His fingers traced the patches, each one telling a story he was only beginning to understand. Outside the diner, the rumble of motorcycles grew steadily louder. One by one, they arrived. Chrome glinting in the morning light, leather-clad riders dismounting with reverence. Some wore Hell's Angels colors, their weathered faces softening at the sight of Tyler. Others were local riders, business owners, even a few teachers from the high school. Lydia and Mark had come early to help Ellen set up coffee and breakfast burritos for the riders. "This is amazing," Lydia whispered, watching the growing crowd through the diner window. Mark nodded, genuine respect in his eyes as he watched Tyler greet each arrival. "Your dad would have loved this," an old biker with a gray beard said, clasping Tyler's shoulder. "He always said the road could heal anything if you gave it time." Ellen emerged from the diner, wearing a blue dress that caught the breeze. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears as she took in the scene. Dozens of motorcycles lined up like soldiers at attention, their riders gathering in groups, sharing stories about Rex. Pastor Riley moved through the crowd, shaking hands and offering quiet blessings. He'd helped organize the route, a 30-mile loop that would take them past all the places that had mattered in Rex's final weeks. Tyler's heart thundered against his ribs as he approached his father's Harley. The machine gleamed in the morning light, every bolt and chrome detail perfect. He'd spent countless hours preparing for this moment, practicing starts and stops in empty parking lots until the bike felt like an extension of himself. "Ready, son?" Ellen asked, her voice trembling slightly as she reached up to straighten his collar. Tyler hugged her tight, feeling the strength in her small frame. "I am, Mom. I really am." The other riders began mounting their bikes, a symphony of engines turning over in the desert air. Tyler swung his leg over the Harley's seat, settling into the leather that still held traces of his father's presence. His hands found the grips, remembering Rex's lessons about balance and control. Ellen stood on the diner steps, one hand pressed to her heart. Lydia and Mark flanked her, along with other townspeople who'd come to witness the send-off. Pastor Riley raised his hand in blessing as the engines roared to life. Tyler took point position just as they'd planned. The Harley's engine purred beneath him, steady and strong. With a deep breath, he gave the signal, and the convoy began to move. They rolled past the diner, chrome flashing in the sun. The sound was magnificent, a thundering chorus of engines echoing off the desert rocks. Tyler felt the vibrations in his bones, in his heart, in his soul. The procession curved around the bend where Rex had crashed that fateful day. Tyler's grip tightened momentarily, then relaxed as he passed the spot. What had once been a place of fear now felt like a marker of beginning, the point where his life had changed forever. The highway stretched before them, a ribbon of black cutting through the red desert landscape. Tyler leaned into the wind, feeling it rush past his face. The weight he'd carried for so long, the shame, the hiding. The fear seemed to lift away with each mile. As they rode, he felt something he'd never experienced before, a profound sense of belonging. He wasn't just Rex's son or Ellen's boy anymore. He was Tyler Moore, a young man who'd learned that courage comes in many forms and that love can bridge even the widest gaps. The sun began its descent as they approached the final leg of their journey, painting the sky in spectacular shades of gold and crimson. The mountains stood like sentinels against the horizon, their shadows stretching across the desert floor. For a brief, crystal-clear moment, Tyler could have sworn he felt Rex's presence beside him, not as the broken man from the hospital, but as the proud father he'd become in those precious final weeks. He could almost see his father's grin, hear his gravelly laugh carried on the wind. The convoy thundered on, a family forged in chrome and courage, riding into the sunset. Tyler Moore led them all, his father's vest catching the last rays of daylight, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. He was visible now, not for his size or his past, but for who he'd chosen to become. The desert sunset faded to twilight as Tyler guided the Harley through the iron gates of Mountain View Cemetery. The rumble of the engine softened to a respectful purr as he navigated the winding paths between headstones, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. He found the spot easily now, having visited several times since the funeral. The simple gray headstone stood quietly against the darkening sky. Rex Grizzly Dalton, 1962 to 2025, finally free. The engraving was still crisp, not yet weathered by the harsh Arizona elements. Tyler cut the engine, letting desert silence settle around him. He reached into his leather vest, his father's vest, and pulled out a carefully wrapped package. Inside was one of his grandfather's old wrenches, polished to a mirror shine, and a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the wrench at the base of the headstone. The metal caught the last rays of sunlight, gleaming like a beacon. Next to it, he laid the note he'd written that afternoon. "We fixed the bike, Dad. You fixed my heart." Straightening up, Tyler wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The memory of those final weeks with Rex felt both sharp and dreamlike. The early morning repairs, the shared stories, the growing understanding between a lost father and a son who'd never known him. A warm gust of wind swept through the cemetery, rustling the sparse desert vegetation. Tyler closed his eyes as it passed over him, carrying the familiar scents of oil and sagebrush. It reminded him of mornings spent working on the Harley, Rex's gravelly voice explaining the mysteries of engines and second chances. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but this time they came with a smile. The pain of loss was still there, but it had softened into something else. Gratitude, perhaps, or acceptance. He touched the headstone one last time, feeling the cool granite under his fingers. "Thanks, Dad," he whispered into the gathering dusk. The stars were beginning to appear as Tyler mounted the Harley again. The bike started with a throaty purr, as if knowing to keep its voice low in this quiet place. He rode home slowly, letting the night air wash over him, the familiar streets of town rolling past like a meditation. The porch light was on at home, casting a warm glow across their small front yard. Ellen sat in one of the old wooden chairs, two steaming mugs on the small table beside her. She'd been doing this every night since Rex passed, waiting up, making sure her son made it home safe. Tyler parked the bike and climbed the steps, his boots making soft sounds on the worn wood. Ellen handed him one of the mugs, hot cocoa, their shared comfort since his childhood. The chocolate was rich and sweet, with just a hint of cinnamon the way she always made it. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the bike's engine tick as it cooled. The metal pinged softly, releasing the day's heat into the desert night. "He'd be proud of you," Ellen whispered finally, her voice gentle in the darkness. Tyler nodded, understanding flowing between mother and son. In the distance, the last echoes of the motorcycle's rumble seemed to linger, transformed from a sound of rebellion into something else. A prayer, perhaps, or a blessing. The noise that had once symbolized everything Ellen feared had become a song of redemption. That night, as Tyler lay in bed, he could hear his mother's soft footsteps in the hallway, then the quiet click of her door. For the first time since Rex's death, maybe for the first time in years, the house felt completely at peace. No more secrets, no more fear, no more running from the past. Tyler closed his eyes, feeling the lingering warmth of the desert wind on his face. In his dreams, he rode beneath endless stars, his father's spirit beside him, both of them finally, truly free. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.